Okay guys, so today I want to show you a new take on White Forest using the Chaos Allure Queen package. Now, this card is coming out, I think, as a common in Rage of the Abyss, so everyone should be able to get this. First thing that I will say right off the bat, you do not have to play the Fiendsmith cards. I am opting to play them in this particular build, but you definitely do not need them. And I also think, because I often get comments where people will ask, what's the best budget version of White Forest? And a lot of people don't like the Runic version. So if you don't want to play a Runic deck, I actually think of all of the budget options, this is probably the best version. Now, you can combine this with the Millennium cards, which I think are also cheap. I'm not sure if Sengenjin has gone up a little bit or not, but that card is probably not worth more than like $5. So you don't have to play those cards. And if you do play them and you don't play the Fiendsmith engine, I think that there would be a lot more space for flexibility in the extra deck because you wouldn't have the 4 package for Wave Hiking Caesar. And then you could probably put back in like the Legatia because you would want to be able to turn Sengenjin, which is level 8, and a level 4 tuner into a level 12, and Legatia is probably the best option for that. So you definitely can play a bunch of other stuff in here. You could also not play Power Spell and just play a bunch of hand traps. If you do want to play the Fiendsmith cards and you want to play hand traps, then I think you should probably just main deck 1 Engraver, cut these 4 cards, turn the Power Spells into hand traps, and fill these 4 cards with other hand traps. So that would be my basic advice on that. If people do want to see a pure budget version that also has in the Millennium stuff, then I might do a video on that if people ask. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother. Okay, so let's get into what this card does and why I think it's good and why it has synergy with the deck and why I think it's actually useful, and you should probably play this, actually. So, Chaos Allure Queen is a light spellcaster monster. Just in case you've forgotten, Arciela can search for light spellcaster monsters. So, probably most of you have only been searching Valor if you've not been searching for a White Forest card. But just remember, there are no additional restrictions on it being a light spellcaster. So it doesn't matter that this is level 7, you can still search it. So you can discard one other light or dark monster, which is basically our whole deck, special summon this card from your hand. You can target one monster in either graveyard, equip it to this card as an equip spell, and if you do, this card's name becomes that equipped monster's name until the end phase. Then, if you equipped a light or dark monster card by this effect, which, for the purpose of the lines I'll be showing you, is basically every single time, you can special summon a dark Allure Queen monster from your deck or graveyard, and then these effects are both once per turn. Now, one thing that is a little bit unfortunate is that you have to special summon a dark Allure Queen. If you didn't have to do that, you could bring itself out, and then it would probably be more attractive to look at a rank 7 package like Big Eye or the Dark Armed rank 7, or maybe like a Dracosac into like Heat Soul for draws, or the Blaze Dragon Ruler rank 7. But you can't do that. So if you want to do the level 7 plays, your option is to have Allure Queen level 7 as the target. But this card basically has no effect because its equip effect requires that it was special summoned off of Allure Queen level 5, which you have no reason to play. So the only reason that you would play the Allure Queen level 7 is if you specifically wanted to make a rank 7 out of this. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. I think that you could even consider, for example, instead of the Fiendsmith stuff, playing a Kashtira package, like with maybe a few of what's the fuel spell call again? Pressured Planet. You could play Pressured Planet, you could play Fenrir, and you could play Unicorn. You could maybe even play a single Birth, depending on how you wanted to go. So that's definitely something you could consider if you wanted to put more rank 7s in here and you weren't on the Fiendsmith cards. You would have like 4 more spots for flexibility. But I think the best option is Allure Queen level 3. So it is very unlikely that this effect will ever come up, but just so you know, once per turn during your main phase, you can select a level 3 or lower monster on your opponent's side of the field and equip it to this card. Now, the reason I don't think this will come up is because it has to be during your main phase, and I don't know how many decks in your main phase will be putting level 3 or lower monsters on field. The other card that is new that I think is actually good is Golden Allure Queen. Now, if you are not playing the Fiendsmith cards, there's definitely space for this. If you are playing the Fiendsmith cards, I think this is debatable. So 3 spellcaster monsters, so you cannot link climb into this. You have to make it straight up with 3 spellcaster monsters, but that's not hard for us. So if this card is link summoned, you can special summon 1 Allure Queen monster from your deck or graveyard, and if you do, this card gains 1500 attack until the end of the next turn. This is actually useful for OTKing, and there's another effect that is useful for OTKing. You'll see that in a second. You can activate the effects that equip a monsters to themselves of monsters with Allure Queen in their original names as quick effects. This is worded kind of strangely. Basically, this is probably irrelevant with Allure Queen level 3, but the Chaos Allure Queen, this equip effect, you can target a monster in either graveyard, equip it to this card as an equip spell. This does not have to be in your main phase. This can be in any phase. I don't think this will come up very often. I think maybe if you were in a grind and you were sitting on the golden Allure Queen, it maybe could come up. There are some decks that like to put boss monsters in the graveyard, even if temporarily. Like some of the bestial decks will put their Dispatter in the grave because they want to tribute it to summon the Lubellion. But I don't know really how often this particular effect will come up. But it's you know, you should know it. The last effect is a pretty good effect. So once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect, so this is a quick effect, you can destroy 1 card on the field. This does not target. Also, Allure Queen monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects for the rest of this turn. So this doesn't target. It is a when effect, which means you can't just choose where you want to add it onto the chain. You have to respond to your opponent's card or effect activation. And it can destroy any 1 card on the field. It doesn't have to be a thing that it's responding to. So this reminds me a little bit of Ghost Ogre, which I like because Ghost Ogre is a card you may have heard people talking about recently because Azamina is coming out and you can only use Deception of the Sinful Spoils once per turn. So if you Ogre it, then that's their use. And Ogre is also kind of flexible because if you go first, you obviously keep the Ogre in your hand and it's a hand trap. If you go second, you could use it on your turn 0 as a hand trap, or you can hold it, or if you've drawn it as your 6th card, you can sometimes use it as like a pseudo breaker when you're trying to interact with your opponent's cards and they do something and then you Ogre it. So I think that this effect is actually useful, and I think that this card is flexible enough that you could consider making it going first and you can consider making it going second. Now, there are 2 things that before I show you the combo lines that I want to just tell you that are very obvious, so I'm not going to like bother spending time showing this in the combo. This is a light level 7, and this will special summon a dark level 3, which means you have access to Chaos Angel like immediately. So if you've just drawn Chaos Allure Queen and you're going second, you can just straight up Chaos Angel before you even begin playing. The other thing is because this card special summons itself and then it special summons another monster, this means that if you're going first, for example, these are 2 bodies. And what are 2 bodies? Moon of the Closed Heaven is the single most broken card that 2 bodies can become. Again, you don't need to play the Fiendsmith cards, in which case you should be playing the Silhouette Rabbit because there is almost nothing better than that besides this, but we'll get to that in a second. So if you're not on the Fiendsmith cards, this must be, I think this must be in your main deck, and you just must main one of the targets, either the Azirune or the Silhouette Trick. Okay, last thing is I am on breakers right now. If you are not playing the Fiendsmith cards, you have more space, and so you could play hand traps. You could also put Millennium stuff in here, and then you have a little bit more flexibility in your extra deck. You could put back in a Legatia so that the Sengenjin, which is an 8, plus a level 4 tuner, can go into a 12, which gives you a draw and a pop. You could also main a single engraver, take out these cards, and still play hand traps, or whatever you want. So, okay, let me show you the lines first, and then I will come back and give you my thoughts when you have a little bit more context. So, I'm not going to be doing the same lines you've seen the whole time. I want to show you if you're using the new cards. So, you've drawn Chaos Allure Queen, and you ditch a lighter dark, so in this case a stellar, and then we equip a lighter dark from grave, and this card's name now becomes the equipped card. So this is now a stellar of the White Forest, and we special summon the level 3 from our deck. So first thing to pay attention to here is because we actually have a stellar of the White Forest on field, we can do stuff like special summon Rusia. And because the Stellar is a spell card, we can do stuff like send it for a draw or literally anything else we want with White Forest, like the Arciela search or whatever. Okay, so now we make the Golden Allure Queen because it requires 3 spellcaster monsters. Again, I'm not trying to argue that this is the best thing you could possibly do. I just want to show you why you might consider playing this. So 3 spellcaster monsters. It is link summoned, so the optional trigger, we can bring back an Allure Queen monster from our deck or graveyard. And this really matters because the level 3, which is the brick, so we only play one of, is the one that's in the grave. And this becomes 4,000 attack until the end of the next turn. Remember the last effect, okay? This is basically a free Ghost Ogre, but better, because they don't know what we're going to hit with the destruction effect, because it doesn't target. Okay, so now we start doing our White Forest plays, and we do, like, I don't know, some type of basic ladder. So let's say we make the Arciela, we search the woes. Oh, one thing that I should mention, this is pretty important. If you are using Arciela to search for the Chaos Allure Queen, it means that your only shot at getting woes of the White Forest is going to be Sylvie. And so you can't forget about that, because a lot of people you'll play with your Sylvie and it's like whether it gets negated or not, you have another shot to get the woes, or if it's not negated, you search something else like maybe Tails, because you can get the woes later with the Arciela. But if you have to search the Chaos Allure Queen, that is not the case, and you actually need to most of the time search the woes off of the Sylvie. Okay, so here we go into a Diabelle and we add back whatever. And now because we have a free shuffle back in the grave in our Synchro, we can bring out our Sylvie. Now here is something else that's like pretty cool about this. Dawn Dragster, I think I was testing this in another version of White Forest, I can't remember what. I think it was, if you're playing a runic version and you have Moonin, the level 3 one, that can be the 3 to go into a 7. But this is not a runic deck, and I think a lot of people don't want to play the runic version. So you now can go into Dawn Dragster, and this is a spell or trap negate. So once per turn, when your opponent activates a spell / trap card or effect, quick effect, you can reduce this card's level by 2, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do that, destroy that card. So this is pretty good. We can do this a whole bunch of times before we run out of levels, and in the grind, this can be helpful. It is also good against blowout stuff like evenly matched. So it's cool that we have something that we couldn't really do before in the Dawn Dragster. So yeah, then you would just have like some of the stuff that you would normally have. Like you have your woes set here, for example. You have a free Tails that'll reset itself off the Diabelle, and your Dawn Dragster protect you. You have your kind of like better Ghost Ogre here. So yeah, that's how you would use Golden Allure Queen in that example. Okay, the other example is if you are going second and you're trying to OTK and you've also drawn the Chaos Allure Queen. So here, again, we're starting off in the same way just to get you familiarized, where this counts as a White Forest name, so we can special summon the Rusia, and this is a spell, so we can send it for a draw or whatever we want. And now we make the Golden Allure Queen. And this goes to 4K, okay, and then it brings back a card like Chaos Allure Queen. And the only thing that you should remember here is if you bring back the Chaos Allure Queen, it means that you're not bringing back the Allure Queen. And not only can you then not make Dawn Dragster, but you also can't just use the Allure Queen monsters to make a Chaos Angel. So you'd have to make the Chaos Angel a different way, which would probably mean you'd have to have like the toy cards. So you'd have like the non-tuner 4 or something. Anyhow, so here we're going to ladder a little bit more. And one of the things that I really like about Draco Berserker in this deck is I liked it when you had a lot of extra space in the extra deck and you were flexible. And so this was just kind of like, you know, it could be good in some scenarios, and it helped with OTKing or clearing fields in a deck that didn't naturally OTK. But as you'll see here, if I bring out my Sylvie, for example, by shuffling back the Arciela that was in grave, I can make a Psychic End Punisher. And so you actually have like many options for monsters that will help you OTK. Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood was pretty popular the last few major events, the last few major YCSs. If that is not just a fad and people continue to play that card, this will be very good because they will have gained like 1 billion million life points, and you go into battle phase and then this gains 1 billion million attack and you can still OTK. And remember this card, so when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish it. That's one thing. This is why it can also be used going first. And if this attacking card destroys an effect monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. Also, it can make a second attack on a monster during this battle phase. So all 3 of these cards have very useful OTKing effects. This is 4K, so it can run over stuff. This can run over two things, gaining attack, but also has a banish. And then this one also has another banish. So pay 1,000 life points, target a monster you control and a card your opponent controls, banish them. So yeah, this could be helpful for OTKing. Okay, so the last thing that I want to show you two things. So obviously, you're not going to draw the Chaos Allure Queen all the time. So let's say that you are doing a ladder. And, oh, another thing that I should mention is that often the soldier will search the Russia. Now, what a lot of people like to do sometimes is they'll search another box because they're going to use the two things that the box sets, and they want the second box to reset those cards and then continue having free sends either in the same turn, or they want to have those sends in their opponent's turn so that they, cycle through the resources more efficiently. Some people like to do this with IP Masquerena. One thing you can do with IP Masquerena, especially in those scenarios, is you can make, what is it called? The Underworld Goddess, for example. But I think in this case, you're normally going to be using this to search the Russia just because you're planning on the Arciela getting you the Golden Allure Queen. And remember, that means that you have one less White Forest search because you're choosing to get this card instead. So you just, obviously have to think about what you're searching and what you have. Okay, so here I'm making the Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. So this is actually crazy. Like, unironically, like a lot of things that I show on my channel I think are decent, and I try to show you combos that I think will actually work. Like, I've made arguments for the Gallant Granite searching Nib and Arciela searching Valor, and I've tried to argue that that is an extremely powerful combination of cards that diversifies the location of your interruptions. So you have stuff in your monster zone, you have like wolves in your trap zone, you have hand traps in your hand, but this is actually broken. So this card is a generic card. It only requires 2 monsters. So that's like even a Nib token, okay? Any 2 monsters, you can make this card. If this card is link summoned, so this is a trigger, you can send a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard. Nothing else matters that's written down here. There are no restrictions on this card. So this does not lock us into anything. If Ogre becomes popular, Ogre will not stop us from dumping. Okay, so we are going to dump this card. So Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. The only thing that matters on this text is while this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. Just to be clear, in case anyone is confused, this has nothing to do with the previous effect. You can target a Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or field to that target. This does not matter. This does not have to be equipped to a Buster Blader. This just has to be equipped. So while this card is equipped to a monster, and it does not have to be by its own effect, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, okay? So we've dumped that card. And now I'm just showing some like random stuff that you can do, like making Gallant Granite to try to build the best board possible. The only downside to the Nib here is that you didn't use the Arciela to search a Valor to guarantee that the Nib resolves. But it's just like an additional backup plan. Now, we summon the Chaos Allure Queen, and remember, this card says you can target a monster in either graveyard, equip it to this card as an equip spell. So guess what? We equip the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, and that's not all, because we still get to special summon the Dark Allure Queen from our deck. And remember, we are playing the level 3 because we want to be able to make Chaos Angel if we're going second, and we want to be able to make Dawn Dragster if we're going first, or in like the grind. Also, guys, remember, this is a spell card now because this is equipped. This is an equip card. Now, what that means is your opponent cannot just imperm the Chaos Allure Queen. They cannot Dark Ruler. They cannot droplet the Chaos Allure Queen. It does not matter. This is not the Floodgate. The Floodgate is this card. This is actually crazy. Another thing that you should think about, okay, why this is crazy, is most people are not going to side in back row removal against White Forest, especially when they know that you're not playing a runic version of the deck. So, like, chances are they're not going to have, like, Lightning Storms and Feather Dusters, stuff like that. The most likely thing that you're going to face is probably an evenly matched. And that is also why we are playing the FA Dawn Dragster. So the answer to our destruction lock is the evenly matched. And the answer to that evenly matched is the FA Dawn Dragster. Okay. Now, at this point, it really doesn't matter what you do. So, again, you don't have to play the Fiendsmith cards. I could just be turning this into the Rabbit, and then the Rabbit could be bringing out Silhouette Trick or Azurune. But I'm just, showing you a sample end board here. So here we go the Necro Equip line, and then we make that card, and then we haven't used our entire engine yet. So we could, for example, still ladder a little bit here. And because I'm playing the Fiendsmith cards, I have very limited options for how to continue beyond this point. So I'm just making SP and making sure that I have like my cards set up in rotation. But you can see here that if you were on like the Millennium engine, you would have other options maybe. Or if you were just on hand traps, you might have more hand traps in hand and maybe just like a rabbit here. Another cool thing about playing rabbit is that just because you're playing rabbit doesn't mean that you can't make Little Knight. So you could rabbit and you could Little Knight underneath the rabbit. Another thing, if you're not playing the extra deck of the Fiendsmith stuff, is you can play like the Masquerena and the Underworld Goddess, for example. So you have like lots of options. So yeah, this is crazy. This is actually crazy. All right, so let's go back to the deck and go over my final thoughts. So I think this card is good because it is very flexible on the dice roll. You know, going second, threatening a Chaos Angel, going first, threatening whatever you want to do with the bodies. FA Dawn Dragster, adding new functionalities to the deck we didn't have before, and also preserving our win condition if you are going for the Protector Whelp or the Destruction Swordsman, whatever you want to call it, Floodgate. Now, I know that some people are probably going to main these cards and probably going to win some games with it. I don't want to play both the Allure Queen level 3 brick and the Dragon Buster brick. I think you're just begging to brick, really, especially when you go second. If you draw the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, because it is a dark monster, you can still pitch it off of Chaos Allure Queen, either if you draw it or if you search it. So it doesn't ruin the combo, but it's still just, you know, like starting with one less card in your hand. And the same thing is true for the Allure Queen level 3, because they do special from grave. This one specials from, let's see, where does it say? From deck or grave, and this one also says deck or grave. So they don't break the combo, but it's, you know, no one wants to start with one less card in their hand. Yeah. Okay, last things that I want to say is I'm not going to go too much into siding patterns right now. I feel like that's a separate video on deck theory. But Eradicator Epidemic Virus is something that I think if you're on Thrust, you should have this in your side. And the reason is, if you are, especially on the toy package, it is very easy to make Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. And this is a dark monster that has more than 2,500 attack. There are other monsters that you can, you know, make that satisfy that condition, but I think Draco Berserker is probably the one that's most likely to work out in that case. Golden Allure Queen is also a dark monster with 2,500 or more attack. So this card, like, is pretty good against Tenpai, for example, and, you know, the Azamina stuff and whatever. So I think if you're on a Thrust package, you should have this in your side deck. And if you are on a Thrust package, you should have other broken one-of searches off of the Thrust. If you are on Rabbits or you're siding it, you should have these cards. A card that I thought was pretty interesting if we're already playing Psychic and Punisher is Psychic Eraser Laser. Now, I think this is probably also better if you're on a Thrust package, because this is searchable, and when you're going second, this is when you would use it. So this says, send one monster your opponent controls that was special summoned from the extra deck to the graveyard. Then your opponent gains life points equal to the original attack or defense of that monster, whichever is higher. And you can only activate one Psychic Eraser Laser per turn. So, first of all, searchable off of Thrust. Second of all, does not target. Third of all, sends, does not destroy or whatever, so it's much less likely to, you know, trigger stuff that floats. And then lastly, your opponent gains life points, which means that Psychic and Punisher is going to gain attack points. So I think that that's pretty cool. You know, I'm not saying that this has to be in everyone's deck, but I think that you could consider this. Is also, you know, probably pretty unexpected, and so I think that people might be really surprised by this. I think if you really liked this and you were trying to build better for going second, or if, for example, you were maining the Silhouette Rabbit or the Protector Whelp, for example, because you weren't on the Fiendsmith cards, or you'd made some other decision to take something else out, you could even side more of these, because, like, if you go second and you thrust for this card, maybe your opponent can't stop you. But if you go second and you've hard drawn this card because you're playing 3 of it because you sided for going second, your opponent is going to be caught way off guard with this card. So I think that's everything that I had for this video. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I really think that this card is worth playing. Maybe not in every version of White Forest, certainly in budget versions. Yeah, any suggestions, let me know. If you want to join the Discord, click the link in the description. Thanks for watching.